The scent of rain and rot led him through the iron gates, past gravestones swallowed by ivy, to the ruined chapel where he found her weeping in the moonlight, a girl with blood on her hands and terror in her eyes. Valerian Corvinus, king of the eternal court, had walked this earth for over 8 centuries. He had seen empires crumble, watched mortals wage their endless wars, and felt nothing but cold amusement at the fragility of human life. Yet something about the sound of her sobbing pulled him forward through the shattered doorway, his white hair catching the silver light like a ghost materializing from shadow. She knelt before the broken altar, her whole body trembling. The stained glass windows had long since fallen to pieces, leaving only skeletal frames that cast strange patterns across the stone floor. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves around her face, and her dress, once white, now stained with mud, and something darker clung to her shaking form. Valerian moved with inhuman silence, his black coat sweeping behind him like wings. He should have simply passed by. The tears of mortals had never concerned him before, but there was something about her anguish, something raw and real that stirred memories he thought he'd buried centuries ago. She didn't notice him until he was mere feet away. When she finally looked up, her eyes went wide with terror. They were the color of smoke and storm clouds, rimmed red from crying. Blood covered her hands, not her own, he could tell. The scent was wrong, masculine, and already cooling. Instead of looming over her, Valerian did something that surprised even himself. He knelt, bringing himself to her level, his pale face angled toward hers with genuine curiosity. His crimson eyes, which had witnessed countless deaths and infinite darkness, softened just slightly. "What is your name?" His voice was deep, accented with the old world, each syllable precise and measured. She stared at him, breath catching in her throat. Up close, she could see how utterly inhuman he was, skin like porcelain, too perfect to be real, hair white as fresh snow falling past his shoulders. He wore clothes that spoke of wealth and power, a perfectly tailored black suit with a crimson silk shirt beneath, every detail immaculate despite the decaying surroundings. Her voice broke. She tried again. "Violet? Violet Lambert?" "Violet," he repeated, and the name sounded like poetry in his mouth. "Why do you weep alone in this forsaken place?" She looked down at her bloodied hands, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I killed him. Oh God, I killed him." Valerian tilted his head, studying her with predatory focus. "Who did you kill, little one?" "Marcus, my boyfriend. He tried to..." She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't force the words past the lump in her throat. "I didn't mean to. The candlestick just..." He fell and hit his head on the fireplace, and there was so much blood, and I ran. I just ran, and I don't know why I came here, but I couldn't go home, and... Peace! Valerian's hand moved to her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. His fingers were cold as winter frost, but impossibly gentle. "Let me see the truth of it." Before she could ask what he meant, his eyes seemed to deepen, pulling her into their crimson depths. Valerian had no need for her stammered explanations. With 800 years of existence came powers beyond mortal comprehension, and reading the recent past from a frightened girl's mind was as simple as breathing had once been. He saw it all in an instant. The apartment, Marcus's rage, the vodka on his breath, his hands around her throat squeezing, her desperate reach for anything, finding the heavy candlestick, the swing, the sickening crack, the way he'd stumbled backward into the marble fireplace surround, the pool of blood spreading beneath his skull, her terror, her flight into the night. Valerian released her, and the connection broke. "You defended yourself." "That's not murder, Violet Lambert. That is survival." She shook her head frantically. "It doesn't matter. He's dead. I killed someone. The police will find nothing." Valerian stood in one fluid motion, extending his hand to her. "Come. You cannot stay here." Violet stared at his offered hand, pale and perfect in the moonlight. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to run. This man, if he was a man at all, radiated danger. But what choice did she have? She was already running, already lost. She placed her bloodied hand in his. His grip was firm and ice-cold as he pulled her effortlessly to her feet. Even standing, Valerian towered over her, easily 6.5 feet of lean, powerful presence. This close, she could see that his beauty was wrong somehow, too sharp and perfect, like a blade honed to a killing edge. "What are you?" The question escaped her lips before she could stop it. A slight curve touched his mouth, not quite a smile, but close. "I think you already know, Violet. Somewhere in that frightened mortal heart, you understand exactly what I am." "That's impossible. Vampires aren't real?" He leaned closer and she could see the way his canines extended just slightly, elongating into elegant points. "You mortals tell yourselves such comforting lies. Come, we must leave before dawn, and there are matters to attend to." "I can't just go with you. I don't even know you." "No, but you know that you have nowhere else to go. You know that the moment they find Marcus Henley's body, you will become their primary suspect. His fingerprints are on your throat, yes, but that will not save you from investigation, from suspicion, from the slow grinding wheels of mortal justice." Valerian's eyes held hers, and there was no deception in them, only cold truth. "I am offering you a choice, Violet Lambert. Come with me, or face what awaits you in that world you just fled." She wanted to argue, to insist she could handle it herself, could explain, could make them understand. But looking into those ancient crimson eyes, she knew he was right. Who would believe her? Marcus had been charming, successful, beloved by everyone who didn't know what he became after drinking. She was nobody, nothing, a college dropout working 2 jobs just to afford her tiny studio apartment. Where would we go? Somewhere safe. Somewhere they will never find you. He turned, still holding her hand, and began walking toward the chapel's shattered entrance. "Unless you would prefer to remain here and wait for dawn, though I confess I would not be able to keep you company for that particular vigil." Despite everything, the terror, the guilt, the surreal impossibility of this entire night, Violet felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her chest. "You really are a vampire." "I am really a vampire," Valerian confirmed, guiding her through the ruined doorway and out into the overgrown cemetery. "I am also a king, though that particular detail seems less pressing at the moment. First, we deal with your immediate problem." "My immediate problem is that I'm apparently being rescued by something that drinks blood. I prefer the term someone, but yes, essentially." Valerian led her through the maze of tombstones, toward the cemetery gates where a sleek black car waited, as if conjured from shadow. "And for the record, I have not yet decided whether to drink your blood or simply help you. Consider yourself fortunate that your tears intrigued me." He opened the passenger door with old-world courtesy, gesturing for her to enter. The interior was all black leather and dark wood, luxurious beyond anything she'd ever experienced. Violet slid inside, her bloodied dress leaving faint marks on the pristine seat. Valerian settled behind the wheel with inhuman grace, and the engine purred to life. "There's a bathroom in my residence where you can clean yourself. Then we will discuss what to do about Marcus Henley's unfortunate demise." "You keep saying we," Violet said quietly, watching the ruined chapel disappear behind them as they pulled onto the empty road. "Why would you help me? What do you want?" For a long moment, Valerian said nothing, his pale hands steady on the wheel as they navigated through the sleeping city. Finally, he spoke. "I do not know yet. You should frighten me, Violet Lambert." "I should frighten you? You're an 800-year-old vampire king, and I'm—" "A girl who made me kneel," he finished softly. "A girl whose tears called to something I thought I had killed centuries ago. Yes, you terrify me, but I find I cannot simply leave you to your fate." They drove through the city in silence after that, past darkened storefronts and empty streets. It was the hour of wolves, that dead time between midnight and dawn when the world held its breath. Violet watched the buildings grow taller, more modern, until they reached the heart of the city's financial district. Valerian pulled into an underground garage beneath one of the massive glass towers. The space was empty except for a collection of expensive cars, vintage and modern, each pristine and perfect. He parked smoothly and turned to face her. "Before we go upstairs, you should understand what you are agreeing to by accepting my help." "I'm listening." "The vampire world exists beneath yours, parallel to it, hidden in shadow. We have our own laws, our own courts, our own wars. By bringing you into my home, I am claiming you under my protection, Other vampires will see you as mine, my responsibility, my charge. His eyes held hers steadily. Some will see you as my possession. Do you understand? Violet's throat went dry. And what do you see me as? I do not yet know, Valerian admitted, but I swear to you, on my honor as king, that I will not harm you, will not turn you without your consent, and will not keep you against your will. You are free to leave whenever you wish. But if you stay, you accept my protection and all that comes with it. It was insane. All of it. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem had been whether she could afford to pay both rent and utilities this month. Now she was sitting in an underground garage with a vampire king, discussing supernatural politics like it was normal. But what choice did she have? Go back to her apartment covered in Marcus's blood? Wait for the police to come knocking? Spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder? Okay, she whispered. I accept. Something flickered in Valerian's eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps, or something deeper. He exited the car and came around to open her door, offering his hand once more. This time, she took it without hesitation. The elevator was sleek and modern, all mirrors and polished steel. Violet caught sight of herself and flinched. She looked like something from a horror movie, hair wild, dress ruined, blood on her hands and face. Beside her, Valerian's reflection was crystal clear, another myth shattered. I thought vampires couldn't— Fairy tales, he said dismissively, spread by the church to make us easier to identify. We cast reflections. We can enter homes uninvited, though it is considered tremendously rude. We can touch silver and crosses without burning. We simply cannot tolerate sunlight, and we require blood to survive. Everything else is fiction. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took Violet's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, currently dark but promising spectacular vistas come daylight. The space was enormous, decorated in shades of black, deep crimson, and silver. Modern furniture mixed with antique pieces, a medieval tapestry hung beside contemporary art, a Baroque chandelier illuminated minimalist architecture. The bathroom is through there, Valerian indicated a hallway. You will find everything you need. I will have clothes brought for you. Violet nodded mutely and made her way toward the indicated door. The bathroom was larger than her entire apartment, all black marble and chrome fixtures. She locked the door behind her and finally allowed herself to break down. The tears came silently this time as she stripped off her ruined dress and stepped into the shower. The water ran red, then pink, then finally clear as she scrubbed Marcus's blood from her skin. She'd killed someone. It didn't matter that it was self-defense, didn't matter that he'd been choking her, that she genuinely feared for her life. A man was dead by her hand. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was softer than anything she'd ever touched, she found clothes laid out on the counter. Black silk pajamas, perfectly sized, along with new undergarments still in their packaging. She dressed mechanically, trying not to think about how Valerian had known her sizes. When she returned to the main room, she found him standing by the windows, a phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in a language she didn't recognize, rapid and fluid. When he noticed her, he ended the call. It is done, he said simply. What's done? Marcus Henley had a history of violence that his charm concealed well. A previous girlfriend who was paid to keep silent. A sealed juvenile record. Evidence of both will be discovered. The crime scene will be investigated and found to be consistent with self-defense. Your fingerprints and DNA will be explained by your relationship. You will be questioned, certainly, but not arrested. Not if you follow my instructions precisely. Violet stared at him. How did you— I am very old, Violet, and very wealthy. I have resources beyond your imagining. Lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. Contacts in every level of your mortal bureaucracy. Marcus Henley's death will be ruled accidental or self-defense, and you will be free of suspicion within days. Days? I thought you said I'd be safe here. You are safe here, but you cannot simply vanish. That would create more problems than it solves. No, you will return to your life. Answer their questions with honesty about his attack on you, and allow the truth to set you free. Valerian moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space. But you will return here each night, where I can ensure your safety while the investigation proceeds. Why are you doing this? Violet asked again, because she still didn't understand. You don't know me. You have no reason to help me. Valerian reached out, his cool fingers brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. No reason that would make sense to you, perhaps. But I have lived a very long time, Violet Lambert, and in all those centuries, I have rarely acted on impulse. Yet something about finding you in that chapel, weeping over your survival, touched something I thought long dead. Call it curiosity, call it fate, call it whatever helps you sleep. I don't think I'll be sleeping much tonight. A genuine smile crossed his face, transforming him from terrifying to devastating. Then we shall talk instead. I find myself curious about the girl who made me kneel. Tell me, Violet, how does a college dropout find herself in a ruined chapel at midnight, covered in blood? Despite everything, she found herself smiling back, bitter and broken though it was. That's a long story. I have nothing but time, so she told him. About growing up in foster care, bouncing from home to home, about the scholarship she'd earned and then lost when her foster mother got sick, and she'd had to work instead of study. About meeting Marcus, how charming he'd seemed at first, how slowly his true nature had revealed itself, the first time he'd raised his voice, the first time he'd grabbed her arm too hard, the escalation, the fear, tonight's explosion. Valerian listened without interruption, his ancient eyes betraying nothing. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You have survived much, little one, he finally said. Far more than most mortals twice your age. You are stronger than you believe. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm falling apart. Strength is not the absence of fear or pain. It is continuing to exist despite them. He moved to a cabinet and retrieved a crystal decanter of amber liquid. Whiskey? I cannot drink it myself, but I keep it for guests. You have mortal guests often? Not as often as you might think. Most of my court consists of vampires, and we have little use for alcohol. But occasionally there are business associates, political necessities. He poured a generous measure and brought it to her. Drink. It will help with the shock. Violet accepted the glass and took a careful sip. The whiskey burned going down, but warmth spread through her chest afterward. Tell me about your world, the vampire world. Why? Because if I'm going to survive in it, even temporarily, I should understand it. Valerian's expression shifted into something like approval. Intelligent as well as resilient. Very well. What would you like to know? Everything. Start with the basics. He settled into one of the chairs, gesturing for her to sit opposite him. She curled up on the plush sofa, tucking her bare feet beneath her. Vampires are, for lack of a better term, immortal, Valerian began. We do not age, do not sicken, cannot die, except by extreme violence or sunlight. We require blood to survive, though the amount varies depending on age and power. Young vampires may need to feed nightly. I feed perhaps once a week, sometimes less. Do you kill when you feed? Not anymore. It is considered wasteful and draws unwanted attention. We have donors, willing mortals who provide blood in exchange for money, protection, or the pleasure of the feeding itself. Violet's eyes widened. Pleasure. A vampire's bite can be quite pleasurable when we wish it to be. The venom we produce has euphoric properties. His eyes met hers, dark and intense, though it can also be agonizing. It depends entirely on our intent. She shivered and took another sip of whiskey. What else? We are organized into courts and clans, each with their own territories and rules. I rule the Eternal Court, which controls this city and the surrounding regions. There are other courts, the Shadow Court to the west, the Crimson Court to the south, the Obsidian Court overseas. We maintain a delicate peace, though tensions run high. Tensions over what? Power, as always, territory, resources, and increasingly over the question of mortals. What question? Valerian's expression darkened. Whether they should be treated as cattle or cultivated as allies. My court believes in coexistence, in maintaining the masquerade that keeps both our species safe. Others view mortals as nothing more than food, unworthy of consideration or mercy. And you brought me into the middle of this? I brought you under my protection, which means that anyone who wishes to harm you will face my wrath. That is not an inconsiderable deterrent. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his white hair falling forward like a curtain. You are safe here. Violet. Safer than you have perhaps ever been. The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, she found it oddly comforting. This creature, this ancient predator, had appointed himself her guardian. It made no sense, but then again, nothing about this night made sense. Can I ask you a personal question? You may ask, I may not answer. How old are you really? You said over 800 years. I was born in 1187 in what is now Romania. I was 28 when I was turned, and I have been 28 for 839 years. His eyes grew distant, lost in memory. I was a lord's son, a soldier, convinced of my own invincibility. A vampire named Seraphina showed me otherwise. She turned me, taught me, and then released me to make my own way in the darkness. Do you regret it? Becoming what you are? Every day, he said softly, and never. It is a contradiction I have learned to live with. They talked through the night, trading questions and answers as the city began to wake beyond the windows. Valerian told her about the centuries he'd witnessed, the rise and fall of empires, the slow march of progress. She told him about her small life, her simple dreams, a degree, a real job, maybe someday a family. Those dreams are not lost to you, he said as the sky began to lighten. You can still have them if you wish. Can I, after tonight? Tonight you survived. That is not a crime, Violet. That is a victory. He stood as the first rays of sunlight began to touch the horizon, though the windows immediately darkened, tinting to complete opacity. I must rest now. Daylight is my enemy, and I need sleep. You should rest as well. The bedroom is yours. I have a separate chamber. What if I need you? There's a phone by the bed. Press one. I will come, daylight or not, if you truly need me. He moved toward a door she hadn't noticed before, then paused. Sleep, Violet Lambert. You are safe here. I give you my word. Then he was gone, the door closing silently behind him. Violet sat alone in the enormous penthouse as artificial night descended, the windows blocked completely against the sun. She should have been terrified, should have been running. Instead, she found the bedroom Valerian had indicated, crawled between sheets that smelled of cedar and something darker, and fell into exhausted sleep. She woke to darkness and the smell of coffee. Disoriented, she sat up, memories of the previous night flooding back in horrifying detail. Marcus, the blood, the chapel, Valerian. She found clothes laid out on a chair, jeans, a soft sweater, undergarments, all in her size. She dressed quickly and followed the smell of coffee to the kitchen, where she found a woman with dark skin and kind eyes setting out food. Good evening, the woman said warmly. I'm Diana. Mr. Corvinus asked me to prepare something for you when you woke. Evening? What time is it? Just past 7. You slept the entire day. Diana gestured to the spread on the counter. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I made a bit of everything. Eggs, toast, fruit. There's coffee, tea, juice. Thank you, Violet said, overwhelmed. I'm Violet. I know, sweetheart. Valerian told me. You've had quite a night. Diana's expression was sympathetic but unsurprised. Don't worry, you're not the first stray he's brought home. I'm not? Valerian has a protective streak a mile wide, though he pretends otherwise. Last year it was a runaway teenager. Year before that, a woman fleeing an abusive marriage. He finds people who need help and he helps them. That's just who he is. Violet felt something ease in her chest. She wasn't special then, just another charity case. Somehow that made it easier to accept. Where is he? In his chambers, awake but conducting business. He said you should eat and then call if you need him. Otherwise he'll join you in an hour. Diana patted her shoulder. Eat, honey. You look like you need it. Violet ate mechanically, the food tasteless in her mouth despite obvious quality. When Diana left, she found herself wandering the penthouse, examining the curious mix of ancient and modern. A painting that looked centuries old, books in languages she didn't recognize, a photograph the only one she'd seen of Valerian with a group of others, all pale and beautiful and unmistakably vampiric. My court, Valerian's voice came from behind her, and she jumped. He'd materialized silently, dressed now in black trousers and a deep crimson shirt. My inner circle, rather. The ones I trust most. You scared me. My apologies. Old habits. He moved to stand beside her, looking at the photograph. That is Nikolai, my second. Beside him is Anastasia, my advisor. The twins are Lucian and Lysander, my enforcers, and the woman in the back is Serafina, my maker. She's beautiful. She is deadly, but yes, also beautiful. He turned to face her. How are you feeling? Confused, scared, grateful? I don't know. Violet met his eyes. Diana said, I'm not the first person you've helped. No, you're not. So why does this feel different? Valerian was quiet for a moment, his crimson eyes searching her face. Because it is different. The others, I helped them out of duty, out of what little remains of my conscience. But you, Violet. He reached out, his cool hand cupping her cheek. You, I cannot seem to stop thinking about. That should concern me far more than it does. Violet's breath caught. She should pull away, should put distance between herself and this beautiful, dangerous creature. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. The police will want to speak with you tomorrow, Valerian said quietly. I have arranged for a lawyer to accompany you. You will tell them the truth, that Marcus attacked you, that you defended yourself, that you panicked and ran. Do not mention me. Do not mention where you went. Say you walked the streets in shock and eventually returned home. Can you do that? I think so. You must do more than think. You must be certain. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. They will be looking for signs of deception. You must believe what you are saying. But it's not true. I didn't go home. Where you slept is irrelevant. What matters is what happened in that apartment. That is true. Focus on that truth, and the rest will be convincing enough. Violet nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. Okay, I can do that. Good. He dropped his hand but didn't step away. Tonight, I would like you to meet someone, a member of my court who can help ensure your safety while all this is resolved. Is that necessary? It is prudent. There are elements within the vampire world who would see you as a weakness, a way to get to me. I need to make it clear that you are under my protection and that harming you would be suicide. The casual way he discussed her potential murder should have been terrifying. Instead, Violet found herself oddly calm. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe she was losing her mind. Or maybe, after years of feeling invisible, there was something intoxicating about being important enough to protect. All right, she agreed. When? Within the hour. My court gathers here each evening to discuss business. Tonight, I will introduce you. He left her to prepare, and Violet found herself standing before the mirror in the bedroom, trying to see what a vampire king saw when he looked at her. She was nothing special, average height, average build, brown hair that never quite behaved, gray eyes that were more tired than mysterious. What had made him stop? What had made him kneel? At precisely 9 o'clock, there was a knock on the bedroom door. Valerian stood in the hallway, and behind him she could hear voices, multiple people in the main room. Are you ready? He asked. She wasn't. She nodded anyway. The penthouse had transformed. Where before it had been empty, now it was filled with vampires. Violet counted at least 20, all of them pale and perfect and terrifyingly beautiful. Conversation stopped as Valerian entered with her at his side. My court, Valerian said, his voice carrying effortless authority. I present to you Violet Lambert, who is under my personal protection. She is not to be harmed, threatened, or manipulated. She is not prey. She is my guest, and you will treat her with the respect due that position. Is this understood? A chorus of acknowledgments followed, though Violet noticed some looked more curious than others, and a few looked downright hostile. A man stepped forward, tall and pale, with white blonde hair and ice-blue eyes. Nikolai Draven, my lady, he said, bowing slightly. Valerian second. Welcome to the Eternal Court. Thank you, Violet managed, her voice steadier than she felt. A woman joined him, stunning and severe, with white hair, braided in an intricate pattern. Anastasia Volkov. I advise our king on matters of politics and strategy. You have certainly created a political situation, little human. I didn't mean to. Of course you didn't. None of them ever do. But Anastasia's smile held a hint of warmth. Still, it will be interesting to see how this plays out. The introductions continued. The twins, Lucian and Lysander, both grinned at her with matching expressions of mischief. Others gave their names and roles: warriors, advisors, diplomats. All of them seemed to accept Valerian's decree without question, though several studied her with open curiosity. Then, a new voice cut through the crowd, cold and mocking. "So this is the mortal who has captured our king's attention. How ordinary." The speaker was a woman, stunning even among vampires, with flowing white hair and eyes like frozen emeralds. She wore a dress that looked like it cost more than Violet had earned in her entire life, and she moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone used to being the center of attention. "Seraphina," Valerian's voice held warning, "mind your tongue." "I speak only truth, my child." Seraphina circled Violet like a predator. "She is plain, weak, mortal. What possible use could she be to you? That is not your concern. But it is. You are king. Your choices affect us all, and choosing to protect some random human girl, to bring her into our midst, into your home." Seraphina's laugh was cruel. "It makes you look weak, Valerian. It makes our entire court look weak." The room had gone deadly silent. Violet felt every eye on her, judging, measuring, finding her wanting. Valerian moved then, faster than thought, placing himself between Violet and his maker. "I will say this once, Seraphina. She is under my protection. Challenge that, and you challenge me. Is that what you wish?" For a long moment the two vampires stared at each other, centuries of history passing between them. Finally, Seraphina inclined her head, though her eyes remained cold. "Of course not, my king. I merely express concern for your well-being." "Your concern is noted and dismissed. Now, unless there is actual business to discuss, this gathering is concluded." The court dispersed quickly, vampires filing out until only Nikolai, Anastasia, and the twins remained. Seraphina left last, pausing at the door to give Violet one final poisonous look. When they were gone, Violet realized she was shaking. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "You have nothing to apologize for," Valerian cut her off. "Seraphina is complicated. She made me, and she has never quite forgiven me for surpassing her in power. She looks for weakness in everything I do." "Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm making you look weak." "You're making me look human," Anastasia said quietly, "which frightens them, because Valerian has not appeared human in centuries. It means you matter, and that gives you power, whether you realize it or not." Nikolai nodded agreement. "The question is, little human, what will you do with that power?" "I don't want power. I just want to be safe." "Safety is a form of power," Lucian or Lysander said. Violet still couldn't tell them apart. "The power to exist without fear." "And you have it, here with us," his twin added. "Seraphina's posturing aside, the court will protect you. You're one of us now." "I'm not a vampire." "No," Valerian said softly. "But you are mine. That makes you untouchable." The casual possessiveness in his words should have bothered her. Instead, she felt heat bloom in her chest. When had she become the kind of person who wanted to belong to someone? Maybe when she'd spent her whole life belonging to no one. The others left, and Violet found herself alone with Valerian once more. The penthouse felt different now, charged with an energy that hadn't been there before. "You should rest," Valerian said. "Tomorrow will be difficult." "I'm not tired. I slept all day." "Then what would you like to do? Talk to me. Tell me more about you, real things, not just history." So they sat together as the city glittered beyond the darkened windows, and Valerian told her things he claimed he'd never told anyone. About the loneliness of immortality, about watching everyone you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. About the slow erosion of humanity, the way each century stripped away another piece of what he'd been, until he sometimes wondered if anything remained. "But then I found you crying in that chapel," he said quietly. "And for the first time in decades, I felt something. Actual feeling, not just the echo of it. You remind me what it was like to be human, Violet, and I find I do not want to let that go." "I'm not sure that's healthy," Violet said, putting that on me. "It is not. But I am 800 years old. I stopped being healthy centuries ago." He reached out, taking her hand in his. "I do not expect you to fix me, Violet. I do not even expect you to stay. But while you are here, allow me to remember what it felt like to care." She should have pulled away, should have established boundaries. Instead, she interlaced her fingers with his, feeling the coldness of his skin against her warmth. "Okay," she whispered, "but you have to promise me something." What? Promise you'll let me go if I ask, that you won't use your power or your influence to keep me here against my will. I already gave you my word on that. I know, but I need to hear it again. I need to know I still have a choice. Valerian brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. You always have a choice, Violet Lambert, always, and if you choose to leave, I will let you go no matter how much it costs me. That is my vow. The next day arrived too quickly. Violet found herself in a police interrogation room, the lawyer Valerian had sent sitting beside her. Detective Morrison was kind but thorough, walking her through the events of that night over and over. She told the truth, just as Valerian had instructed. Marcus's drinking, the argument, his hands around her throat, the candlestick, the blood, the panic, running. They showed her photos that made her stomach turn, asked questions that made her relive every terrible second. But the lawyer was good, redirecting when needed, pointing out the bruises on her throat that matched Marcus's hands perfectly. After 6 hours, they let her go. Not arrested, not charged, just told not to leave the city while the investigation continued. Valerian was waiting outside in his car, and she'd never been so relieved to see anyone in her life. She collapsed into the passenger seat, and he drove without speaking, giving her time to process. It's over, she finally said. The interview, yes, the investigation will continue, but they have already found the evidence of his past violence. My people made certain of it. By week's end, this will be closed. Your people. You have people everywhere, don't you? Wealth and time afford certain advantages. They returned to the penthouse, and Violet found herself falling into a strange routine. Days spent sleeping, safe in the darkness Valerian provided. Evenings waking to find him conducting business, managing his court, ruling his kingdom from the shadows. Nights talking, learning each other, building something she didn't dare name. He never fed in front of her, always disappearing for an hour here or there and returning with color in his cheeks and warmth in his skin that faded within hours. He never pressured her, never pushed for more than conversation and increasingly comfortable companionship. But the attraction grew anyway, inevitable as the dawn. The way he looked at her with those ancient crimson eyes, the careful way he touched her, always gentle, always asking permission. The sound of his laugh when she said something that surprised him, the way he listened like every word she spoke mattered. A week passed, then 2. The investigation concluded exactly as Valerian had predicted. Marcus Henley's death ruled an accident occurring during a domestic violence incident, Violet cleared of any wrongdoing. She was free. She should have left then, should have thanked Valerian and returned to her life. Instead, she found herself standing in his study, watching him work through documents and realizing she didn't want to leave. I could hear your heartbeat increase from here, Valerian said without looking up. What troubles you? I don't want to go back. Now he looked at her, setting down his pen with deliberate care. What do you mean? To my apartment, to my old life. I don't want to go back to being invisible and alone. Is that terrible? That I'm grateful Marcus is dead because it led me here? Valerian stood and crossed to her in 3 long strides. You are not grateful he is dead. You are grateful you survived. There is a difference. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. And you are not terrible. You are human, and you are allowed to want more than mere survival. What if what I want is to stay here, with you? Then you stay. Just like that? Just like that. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and she saw hunger flash in his eyes before he controlled it. But you should understand what you are choosing, Violet. This world I inhabit, it is not safe. It is not easy. There are others like Seraphina who will see you as a weakness to exploit. You said I was protected. You are, but that protection comes at a cost. You would be mine, in truth, not just in name. Mine to guard, mine to claim, mine to... He stopped himself, jaw clenching. Yours to what? Mine to want, he finished roughly. And I do want you, Violet, more each day. You should know that before you decide to stay. Her heart raced, and she knew he could hear it, could probably smell the spike of her arousal, the way her body responded to his nearness. She should be frightened, should be cautious, but she'd spent her whole life being careful, being invisible, being safe. And where had it gotten her? I want you too, she whispered. Valerian's control visibly cracked. "You do not know what you are saying. I'm saying I haven't felt this alive since before I can remember. I'm saying when I'm with you, I feel seen. I feel like I matter. And maybe that's messed up. Maybe I'm just trauma bonded or projecting or whatever. But I don't care. I want to stay. I want this. I want you. Violet." She kissed him before he could talk her out of it, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. For one awful second, he was utterly still, and she thought she'd made a terrible mistake. Then his arms wrapped around her, pulling her tight against him as he kissed her back with 800 years of loneliness and longing. He was cold, his lips like winter frost, but the passion behind the kiss burned. One hand tangled in her hair, while the other pressed against the small of her back, holding her like she was precious and fragile and infinitely valuable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, well, she was breathing hard. He was perfectly composed except for the wildness in his eyes. Valerian rested his forehead against hers. "You undo me," he murmured. "You beautiful, brave, reckless girl. You absolutely undo me. Is that a yes? Can I stay?" "You can stay, for as long as you wish, forever if you want it." He pulled back to meet her eyes. "But we do this properly. I court you, Violet Lambert. I show you what it means to be treasured. And if you still want me after that, if you still choose this life, then I will give you everything I have to give." "What if I want to skip the courting part?" A real smile crossed his face, transforming him from terrifying to heartbreaking. "Then you will have to be patient, because I have waited 800 years to feel this way about someone, and I intend to savor every moment." So he courted her, and it was like nothing she'd ever experienced. Flowers delivered by courier at impossible hours, books she'd mentioned wanting to read appearing on her nightstand, a complete wardrobe of clothes that actually fit, that made her feel beautiful. Nights spent at exclusive restaurants where the staff knew to serve her human food while Valerian drank wine he couldn't taste, just for appearances. He took her to the theater, to art galleries, to a private concert where a string quartet played centuries-old compositions he'd heard premiered. He showed her the city from rooftops she'd never known existed, held her close as they watched the lights sparkle below. And always, he was perfect gentleman, touching her with care, kissing her with passion, but never pushing for more, treating her like she was made of glass and starlight. It was driving her insane. "You are being deliberately obtuse," Anastasia told her one evening when they'd started having regular tea together, a friendship Violet had never expected but deeply appreciated. "He wants you. You want him. The sexual tension is so thick the entire court can feel it. Why not simply take what you both clearly desire?" He wants to take things slow. He is a fool, an 800-year-old fool who has forgotten how to be spontaneous. Anastasia sipped her tea with deliberate elegance. "If I may offer advice, please, stop waiting for him to make the move. He is terrified of hurting you, of taking advantage, of being the monster he thinks he is. Show him you are not fragile. Show him you choose him actively and enthusiastically." "How?" Anastasia's smile was wicked. "Oh, my dear, I think you know how." That night, when Valerian returned from feeding, Violet was waiting for him in his study. She'd borrowed one of the silk robes Diana had left black and barely covering anything important. He stopped dead in the doorway, eyes going wide. Violet, what?" "I'm done being patient," she said, standing from his desk chair. "I'm done being careful. I know what I want, Valerian, and I want you. All of you. Tonight." He stood frozen, clearly warring with himself. "You do not know what you are asking. Then show me. Teach me. I trust you. You should not. I am dangerous, Violet. I could hurt you without meaning to. I could lose control, and you won't." She crossed to him, placing her hand over his still heart. "You have had 800 years to perfect your control, and you care about me too much to risk harming me. I know that, even if you don't." His hand came up to cover hers, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with want. "If we do this, there is no going back. You will be mine in every way. Do you understand? I'm already yours, have been since you knelt in that chapel and asked my name. Now, I want you to be mine." That broke him. He kissed her with an intensity that stole her breath, lifting her effortlessly into his arms and carrying her to his bedroom, a space she'd never entered before. It was dark and opulent, dominated by an enormous bed with black silk sheets. He laid her down with infinite care, and then proceeded to worship every inch of her with hands and mouth, and whispered words in languages she didn't speak but understood perfectly. He was gentle and fierce, controlled and wild, and when he finally made her his, it was with a reverence that brought tears to her eyes. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to the silence where a heartbeat should have been, Violet felt more complete than she'd ever felt in her life. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. Valerian's arms tightened around her. "I love you, Violet Lambert. I have loved you since I found you weeping in that chapel. I will love you until the stars burn out." "That's a long time." "Not long enough." They drifted in comfortable silence until Violet asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Would you turn me if I asked?" She felt him go still. "Is that what you want?" "I don't know yet, but I want to know if it's possible. If you would." "The process is difficult, painful, and there's no guarantee you would survive it. Many humans do not." His fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "But if you wanted it, truly wanted it, then yes, I would turn you. I would make you immortal so that we could have forever instead of merely your lifetime. How long do I have to decide?" "As long as you need, years if necessary. I am patient, beloved, and I will take whatever time you can give me." But the decision was made for her 3 weeks later, when everything went wrong. It started at a court gathering, one of the regular events where Valerian met with other vampire leaders to maintain the delicate peace. Violet had attended several by now, growing comfortable with the politics and intrigue. This night, representatives from the Shadow Court attended vampires Violet had never met, led by a king named Constantine, who looked at her like she was a particularly interesting insect. "So this is the mortal who has bewitched Valerian," Constantine said, circling her with predatory interest. "I confess, I do not see the appeal." "Then you need not concern yourself with it," Valerian said coolly. "But I am concerned. Your obsession with this human has made you weak, Valerian, distracted. The other courts are beginning to question whether you are fit to rule." "Let them question. My fitness to rule is not determined by my choice of companion." "No? Then perhaps it should be tested." Constantine moved with blinding speed, and suddenly he had Violet by the throat, lifting her off her feet. "Let us see how strong you are when her life is at stake." Valerian's roar shook the penthouse. He launched himself at Constantine with a fury Violet had never witnessed, and suddenly the elegant gathering dissolved into chaos. Vampires chose sides, some defending their king, others joining Constantine's challenge. Blood painted the walls, furniture shattered, and Violet, dropped and forgotten in the initial rush, could only press herself into a corner and watch in horror as the two kings tore into each other. They were evenly matched, both ancient and powerful. But Constantine had allies, and even Valerian's court couldn't hold them all back. She saw Nikolai go down, Anastasia fighting 3 opponents at once, the twins separated and struggling. Then Constantine had Valerian pinned, a wooden stake raised above his heart. "Any last words, old friend?" Violet moved without thinking. She grabbed a piece of broken table leg and launched herself at Constantine, driving the makeshift stake into his back with all her strength. It didn't kill him, she missed his heart, but the surprise was enough. Constantine released Valerian with a howl of rage, turning on Violet with murder in his eyes. "You dare!" Valerian caught him by the throat, wrenching the stake from his back and driving it through Constantine's chest in one smooth motion. The Shadow Court King crumbled to ash before he could even scream. Silence fell. The fighting stopped as everyone stared at the pile of ash that had been one of the oldest vampires in existence. "Anyone else wish to challenge me?" Valerian's voice was death itself. "Anyone else wish to question my strength?" No one moved. One by one, Constantine's allies knelt in submission. "Get out," Valerian ordered. "All of you, my court included, out now!" The penthouse emptied in seconds, leaving only Valerian and Violet among the wreckage. She was shaking violently, blood on her hands again, not her own this time. Valerian was at her side in an instant, gathering her into his arms. "Are you hurt? Did he harm you?" "I'm fine, I'm okay. But you. I am unhurt. But Violet, what you did attacking Constantine like that, you could have been killed. He was going to kill you. I would have found a way out, I always do. But you are mortal, fragile, and you threw yourself at one of the oldest vampires in existence. He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were wild. Do you understand how close you came to dying? I couldn't just watch him kill you. So you risked yourself. Again. Just like with Marcus, you faced down something far stronger than you because you refused to be helpless. He laughed, but it sounded broken. You magnificent, terrifying woman. You're going to be the death of me. I thought you were already dead. Technically. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. But you make me feel alive, and the thought of losing you. You didn't lose me. I'm right here. She cupped his face in her hands. But Valerian, this is going to keep happening, isn't it? As long as I'm human, as long as I'm your weakness, they'll keep coming after me to get to you. I will protect you, no matter what it takes. I know you will, but I don't want to need protecting. I don't want to be the vulnerability that gets you killed. She took a deep breath. Turn me. He went still. Violet, I've been thinking about it for weeks, and tonight proved it. I can't stay human and stay with you, not safely, not without putting everyone I care about in danger. She met his eyes steadily. I want forever with you, Valerian, so turn me, make me your equal, let me stand beside you instead of behind you. It will hurt, more than anything you have ever experienced. I don't care. You could die. Then I die trying to be with you. That's better than living without you. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, searching for any hint of doubt. Finding none, he nodded slowly. Very well, but not tonight. You need to understand what you are choosing, need time to prepare yourself mentally and physically, and we must ensure the transformation happens under controlled circumstances. How long? 3 days. That will give me time to arrange everything, to gather the supplies needed, to ensure your safety during the transition. He kissed her softly. Are you certain, beloved? Truly certain. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Anastasia explained what to expect the pain as the vampire venom rewrote her entire cellular structure, the 3 days of agony as her body died and was reborn, the hunger that would follow. Nikolai showed her how to fight, basic self-defense that would be amplified by vampire strength and speed. The twins taught her about vampire politics, ensuring she understood the world she was joining. Diana wept when Violet told her, then hugged her fiercely. You be brave, honey, and you come back to us. I will, Violet promised. On the 3rd night, Valerian led her to a chamber deep beneath the penthouse, a room she'd never seen, lined with stone and warded with symbols she didn't recognize. This is where I was turned, he explained quietly, where Seraphina brought me 800 years ago. It is sacred space, and it will keep you safe during the transition. Will you stay with me? Every moment. I will not leave you, Violet, not even when you beg me to end it. I won't beg. You will, they all do. The pain is beyond anything you can imagine, but I will be here, and I will remind you why you chose this. She lay down on the stone slab in the center of the room, and Valerian knelt beside her, just as he had that first night in the chapel. Last chance to change your mind, he said softly. Turn me. He bent to her throat, and she felt his fangs pierce her skin. There was a moment of pure ecstasy, the venom he'd mentioned, designed to make feeding pleasurable. Then he bit deeper and began to drain her. The world grayed at the edges as her blood flowed from her body into his. She felt her heartbeat slowing, her breathing becoming labored. Just when she thought she might simply drift away, Valerian lifted his wrist to his own mouth, bit deep, and pressed the wound to her lips. Drink, he commanded. She drank, and liquid fire poured down her throat. His blood was nothing like human blood. It was power and darkness and eternity distilled into fluid form. It burned through her veins, seeking out every cell, rewriting her from the inside out. The pain began slowly, then built to a crescendo that tore a scream from her throat. Valerian held her down as she convulsed, whispering to her in Romanian, words she couldn't understand but took comfort from anyway. It felt like dying, It felt like being born. It felt like every moment of suffering in her life compressed into an eternal now. She begged, just as he'd predicted, pleaded for him to end it, to kill her, to make it stop. But he held firm, never leaving, never wavering, his cool hands on her burning skin, the only anchor to reality. "Come back to me," he whispered over and over. "Come back, beloved. You are stronger than this. Fight. Come back." She didn't know how long it lasted, hours, days, eternities. But eventually, the pain began to recede, replaced by a strange numbness. Her heart gave one final labored beat and then stopped. Silence. Absolute silence where there had always been the constant background rhythm of her pulse. Then, new sensations flooded in. She could hear everything, the whisper of air through vents, the sound of traffic miles away, Valerian's unnecessary breathing. She could smell everything, old blood and new stone, in the city beyond. And when she opened her eyes, she could see every detail of the stone ceiling above her with perfect clarity despite the darkness. "Valerian?" Her voice sounded different, richer somehow. "I am here." His face appeared above her, and she gasped. He had always been beautiful, but now she could see him as vampires, must every detail impossibly perfect, the slight glow of power that surrounded him. "I made it. You made it." He helped her sit up, and she marveled at how easy movement had become. "How do you feel?" "Strange. Everything is different. I can hear your coat rustling. I can smell." She stopped, nose flaring. "Blood. I can smell blood. Upstairs, multiple people. The court is gathered to welcome you if you feel strong enough, but there is no rush. You have eternity now." She looked down at her hands, pale now, white as snow, perfect and unmarked. Then she caught sight of her reflection in the polished stone wall, white hair where there had been brown, eyes that glowed faintly crimson. She was beautiful, inhumanly so, all her imperfections smoothed away. "Is this really me?" "This is who you were always meant to be." Valerian helped her stand, steadying her when she wobbled. "The hunger will come soon. We should feed you before we face the court." "Will I hurt someone?" "Not with me here to guide you. Come." He led her from the chamber, through passages she'd never known existed, until they emerged in an elegant room where a young man waited, looking nervous but determined. "This is Thomas," Valerian explained. "One of our regular donors. He has volunteered to be your first feeding." Violet could smell the blood pumping through Thomas's veins, could hear his elevated heartbeat. The hunger that rose up was overwhelming, but Valerian's hand on her shoulder kept her grounded. "Slowly," he murmured. "Let the instincts guide you, but maintain control. You are not a mindless beast. You are Violet Lambert, and you are strong enough to feed without killing." She approached Thomas carefully, every sense hyper-aware. When she bit into his throat, it was as natural as breathing had once been. The blood flowed into her mouth, warm and rich and perfect, filling the emptiness inside her. She could feel Valerian's presence behind her, could hear his quiet guidance. "Enough," he said after a moment. "That is enough for your first feeding." It took everything in her to pull away, to seal the wound with her tongue as instinct instructed, to step back while her body screamed for more. "Good," Valerian praised. "Very good, beloved. You have excellent control for a newborn." Thomas smiled weakly, accepting the generous payment Valerian handed him before leaving. Violet stood there, marveling at the way the hunger had eased, replaced by a sense of satisfaction and power. "I did it. You did it. And now, if you are ready, your court awaits." They ascended to the penthouse to find it filled with vampires. All of Valerian's inner circle had gathered, along with representatives from other courts who had come to witness the transformation. Conversation stopped as Violet entered on Valerian's arm. She could feel their eyes on her, judging, measuring, but now she met their gazes without fear. She was one of them now, eternal, powerful, protected not by Valerian's decree but by her own immortal strength. Seraphina stepped forward, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Violet thought the ancient vampire might challenge her. Instead, Seraphina inclined her head in acknowledgement. "You survived," she said simply. "Not all do. Perhaps I underestimated you, Violet Lambert." "Perhaps you did." A slight smile touched Seraphina's lips. "Welcome to eternity, child. Use it wisely." Then Nikolai was there, embracing her carefully. "Welcome to the family, little sister." Anastasia kissed both her cheeks. "I knew you had it in you. You are going to be magnificent." The twins lifted her in a joint hug that would have crushed human bones. The rest of the court followed, each offering congratulations and acceptance. When the formalities were done, Valerian drew her aside to the windows. The city sparkled below, and for the first time, Violet looked at it with eyes that would never age, in a body that would never die. "How do you feel?" Valerian asked quietly. "Complete. Like I finally found the place I was always meant to be." She turned to face him, her vampire king, her savior, her love. "Thank you for finding me in that chapel, for asking my name, for giving me eternity. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing this life, for being brave enough to become what you were meant to be." He pulled her close, and she went willingly into his arms. "I love you, Violet, my queen, my equal, my forever." "I love you too," she whispered against his lips, "forever and always." They kissed as the court applauded, two vampires beginning their eternity together. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, unaware that in a penthouse high above, a girl who had once wept alone in a ruined chapel had found her happy ending in the arms of darkness itself. Months passed, then years. Violet grew into her power, learning to navigate the vampire world with grace and strength. She became Valerian's queen in truth, not just in title, ruling beside him with wisdom that belied her young age. Together, they modernized the eternal court, forging alliances with other courts, creating systems to protect both vampires and the humans they fed from. She never forgot the girl she'd been frightened and alone, covered in blood, weeping in a ruined chapel. That girl had been broken, but not destroyed. She had survived, had found strength in her darkest moment, and had chosen to transform her pain into power. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the court was still and the city slept below, Violet would return to that chapel. It remained ruined, abandoned, a secret place that existed outside of time. She would stand where she had knelt that fateful night and remember the vampire king who had found her there, who had knelt and asked her name, who had changed everything. And she would smile, because that night had been the end of her old life and the beginning of something far more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. She had been lost, and she had been found. She had been broken, and she had been remade. She had been human, and now she was eternal. But most importantly, she had been alone, and now she had Valerian, her king, her lover, her forever. And in a world of darkness and blood and immortal politics, that was its own kind of magic, the kind that lasted not just lifetimes, but eternities. The chapel stood silent in the moonlight, a monument to the night everything changed. And somewhere in the city, in a penthouse that touched the sky, a vampire queen smiled in the arms of her king, knowing that every tear she had shed, every moment of pain she had endured, had led her exactly where she needed to be. Home. Finally, impossibly, home. Years turned to decades. The world changed around them as it always did, but Violet and Valerian remained constant. They faced challenges, rival courts, internal politics, the ever-present need to maintain the masquerade that kept both species safe. But they faced them together, two halves of a whole that had found each other against all odds. Violet became known throughout the vampire world as the queen who had chosen her crown, who had transformed from victim to victor, from mortal to immortal, from alone to beloved. Young vampires looked to her as proof that strength could be found even in the darkest moments, that survival was not just about enduring, but about choosing to thrive. And every year, on the anniversary of the night Valerian had found her weeping in that ruined chapel, they would return there together. They would stand in the moonlight among the broken stones and remember the girl who had been so terrified, so alone, so certain her life was over. They would remember the vampire king who had done the impossible, who had knelt before a mortal and asked her name, setting in motion a chain of events that would transform them both. And they would renew their vows to each other, not with words but with touches and kisses and the comfortable silence of two souls who had found their perfect match. The chapel would stand witness to their love, this sacred space where death and life had intertwined, where endings had become beginnings, where a chance encounter had bloomed into forever. Violet Lambert had died in that chapel, in a way. But from her death had risen something stronger, something beautiful, something eternal. She had become Violet Corvinus, Vampire Queen, and she would wear that crown with pride for all the centuries to come. And beside her, always, would be Valerian the King, who had found her in darkness and shown her the light that existed even in the shadows. Together, they would face eternity. Together, they would rule with wisdom and strength. Together, they would prove that even the darkest nights could lead to the most beautiful dawns. Their story had begun with tears and blood, but it would continue with love and power and endless possibility. Because sometimes the worst nights of our lives lead to the best days of our eternity. Sometimes being broken is the first step toward being remade into something stronger. And sometimes, when a vampire king kneels before a weeping girl and asks her name, it is not an ending at all, but the beginning of a love story that will echo through the ages, perfect and eternal and absolutely, impossibly real.